The boy isn't breathing. The whisper cracked against the vaulted ceiling like a tiny hammer on glass. A woman knelt on the marble, palms trembling, something small and glistening cupped inside them. It shifted. It twitched. It made the light shiver. Nora, what did you do? The butler's voice was a blade. Staff froze along the corridor, hands, faces, uniforms, all ironed flat by fear. The fountain outside kept murmuring through the open doors, a silver thread no one ever listened to. Footsteps thundered. Dr. Adrian Vale entered like a verdict in a tailored suit. The empire he built, a chain of research labs, clinics, patents, wore his name in polished steel. He did not shout. He never needed to. His silence did the shouting for him. "Move," he said. Nora eased back from the child on the floor. The boy's lashes fluttered. His mouth parted. His chest stuttered as if remembering an old instruction. "Leo," Adrian said, kneeling. "Look at me." Nothing. Nora pressed her fist to her mouth, stopping a sob before it grew teeth. In her cupped hand, the thing twitched again, dark, wet, almost oval. It looked wrong, like a secret that had lost its way and crawled into a place it didn't belong. "I didn't hurt him," she said softly. He was in pain." Adrian's gaze flicked to her hand, then to her face. He saw only two categories in this house: assets and interference. Her skin, her uniform, her wage, everything about Nora read interference to men like him. "You touched my son without permission?" The butler supplied the outrage. The staff needed it spoken aloud. Nora's voice steadied. "I found this in his ear." The sentence fell between them like a coin in a dry well. Far below, something answered. Leo's fingers twitched. His eyelids quivered. The hush thickened until you could have buttered it on bread. Then, a sound escaped the boy. A torn thread of breath, ragged and real, tugged out of the dark. Adrian's eyes widened a fraction. The butler stopped breathing. Somewhere, a maid crossed herself. Every chandelier crystal held still, listening with 1,000 cold ears. "Leo?" Adrian said again, softer. "Son," the boy blinked. His lips shaped air as if it had weight. A syllable gathered, wavered, fell apart. Nora exhaled a prayer. She had not prayed in years, at least not where anyone could hear. Hands still cupped, she dared a glance at the thing she'd pulled. It seemed to pulse. Not alive exactly, but not dead either. As if built to pretend, Adrian rose. He looked tall enough to scrape the sky. "Take her downstairs," he said to security. Nora's heart slammed once. "Please, listen. He's been pressing that ear every day." It wasn't dirt. It wasn't wax. It moved! "You will remain silent," the butler snapped. "This is a medical matter." Nora shook her head. "If it was medical, your doctors would have seen it." The sentence hit the room like thunder under a silk tablecloth. A few faces flinched. Money liked obedience. It hated echoes. Adrian held up a palm. The room stilled, even the fountain fading to a rumor. "What is it?" he asked. Nora looked at her hands. "I don't know." "You removed it with what?" "A pin," she said, shame warming her cheeks. "I sterilized it." A pin," the butler repeated, savoring it. "God help us." "God helps the ones no one hears," Nora said, and instantly regretted it. Security closed in. Leather shoes on stone, radios hissing. The smell of cologne and control. Leo's chest lifted again. A small sound broke loose, softer than a match, braver than a storm. "Da!" Adrian's face changed. Not much. A man like him learned to move feelings only on the inside. But something cracked behind his eyes, a thin line of light. "Say it," he whispered. "Leo, say it! Da-ad!" The second syllable came like a miracle with its sleeves rolled up. Silence detonated. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was stunned. Nora's vision blurred. She almost dropped the thing cupped in her hands. She tightened her fingers. It felt like rubber and grief, like an answer you didn't ask for. Security hesitated. The choreography faltered. Even obedience wanted to watch. Adrian stared at Nora's hands as if they held both his salvation and his indictment. "Where did that come from?" he asked. Nora shook her head. "From the boy the world forgot to listen to." The butler recovered first. "Call Nova, immediate transport." We'll need a surgical team, an audiology lead, a legal— Legal? Nora said. For a child's first word? The butler's expression was porcelain. For liabilities. Adrian straightened. The marble shone behind him like a sheet of snow no footprint had ever stained. Take her, he said again, but quieter now, as if the order had to tiptoe past something that had woken up. Hands seized Nora's arms. Radios crackled. The corridor swallowed them. Leo reached out, small fingers opening and closing on air. Nora, he said. The name tripped, staggered, found its legs. Every light in the hall seemed brighter, every face sharper. The house that worshipped silence had just heard its first honest sound. If a miracle happens in a mansion built on lies, is it still a miracle, or is it evidence? The morning after the cry, the mansion seemed to rebuild its silence, brick by brick, like a crime scene swept too clean. Servants spoke in glances. Doors closed themselves. Even the fountain outside gurgled softly, ashamed of the noise it made. Nora James stood in the laundry room, steam curling around her like fog. Her hand still trembled when she remembered the boy's voice, the single fragile sound that shouldn't have existed. The thing she'd pulled from his ear was gone now, taken by men in gloves. They hadn't said where. They hadn't needed to. The Vale Mansion had rules. Some written, most not. Rule 1, never speak above a whisper. Rule 2, never ask questions about the boy. Rule 3, never forget who owns your silence. Nora had broken all 3 before breakfast. She scrubbed at a shirt that wasn't dirty, the fabric slick under her knuckles. Her reflection in the iron steel sink looked older, haunted. Behind her, the butler's reflection appeared like a ghost with a clipboard. Dr. Vale wants a statement, he said. I've already given one. He wants a clean one. The kind that doesn't mention movement. She met his eyes through the reflection. You mean the truth? I mean employment, he left. The steam swallowed his outline. Outside, the mansion's hallways stretched long and perfect, lined with portraits that looked down at her like judges. Every inch of this house was designed to mute the world, the carpets thick, the doors sealed, the windows bulletproof. It wasn't a home. It was an echo chamber for wealth. In the center of it all, Dr. Adrian Vale stood by the grand staircase, talking quietly into a headset. His voice was calm, clipped, efficient. Yes, notify Nova. I want a full scan. Yes, immediately, he turned. Ms. James, Nora stopped. Her stomach folded. Sir. He studied her as though measuring a specimen. You've worked here how long? 4 months. And in that time you found cause to operate? I found cause to care, she said before she could stop herself. Something flickered in his expression, maybe surprise, maybe annoyance. You removed an unknown object from my son's ear with a pin. Why? Because he was crying without sound, and no one listened. He looked past her toward the marble floor where it happened. The spot had been polished, spotless, yet somehow it still carried the shape of what he'd heard, his son's first word. Do you believe in miracles, Ms. James? He asked. She hesitated. Not in houses like this. His gaze sharpened. Then believe in science. Nova will explain everything. Nova built the silence, she murmured. He stepped closer. What did you say? Nothing, sir. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the fountain's distant rhythm. Adrian's eyes softened, barely. You will stay in your quarters until I say otherwise. Nora nodded, but her mind burned. She had seen the way Leo flinched whenever the word hospital was mentioned. She had seen the scars behind his ear, the ones no one talked about. That night, the house fell into its ritual hush again. Lights dimmed automatically. Security screens glowed in quiet rooms. The staff retired behind locked doors. Nora sat awake, watching the moonlight crawl across the ceiling like a secret trying to escape. From somewhere down the corridor came a faint sound, a tapping, like fingers against glass. She rose and followed it, barefoot, The mansion seemed to breathe around her, its wealth humming softly through hidden wires. At the end of the hall, she saw a shape, small, fragile, haloed by the light of a night lamp. Leo stood there, awake, pressing his ear to the window pane as if the wind outside was whispering something only he could hear. Nora's heart clenched. "Leo," she whispered. He turned. His lips moved, uncertain, searching for sound. Then, quietly, a word, hoarse but real, cold. Her breath caught. He heard himself. He knew the word, and yet. From the dark garden beyond the glass, another sound answered. Something low, metallic, and alive. The fountain gurgled once, then stopped entirely, as if it too were listening. Nora glanced toward the hallway behind her, where cameras blinked red. Somewhere in this house, every noise was recorded except the ones that mattered. If silence can be built, she thought, it can also be designed. Her reflection in the window looked like someone else, a woman who no longer belonged in this mansion of marble and secrets. The boy reached for her hand. His fingers were cold. "What did you see, Leo?" she asked softly. He signed a word she didn't recognize, something circular, looping. Then he pointed toward his ear again, fear flickering across his face. Nora swallowed hard. "They said the pain was gone." He shook his head. "Inside," he whispered. "Still moving." Her stomach turned to ice. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, soft but certain. The house where silence lived had just begun to make noise. Dawn slid across the city like a sheet of dull gold. Inside the Vale estate, it touched the chandeliers, the portraits, the steel banisters, and finally found the boy sitting on the staircase, watching his toy cars in perfect rows. He moved them without sound, each motion careful, deliberate, as if afraid noise might break something sacred. Nora stood at the end of the hall, a tray in her hands, her heart still carrying the echo of his voice from the night before. One word, one impossible word. Yet no one spoke of it. The house acted as though it had never happened. The butler's report was rewritten, the security footage erased. The only trace was the weight in her chest and the way the boy's eyes met hers whenever silence fell too hard. "Breakfast is ready, Leo," she said softly. He looked up. He didn't answer, but his lips curved faintly, a ghost of a smile. His fingers moved, one small sign, a circle near his chest. She'd learned enough sign language to know it meant safe. But he didn't look safe. Nora knelt beside him. "Does it still hurt?" she signed. He nodded once, then pointed to his ear, then to the ceiling. "Up there?" she mouthed. He nodded again, eyes wide. Nora followed his gaze. Above them, through. The glass roof, the morning light passed through layers of tinted panels, the same design used in hospital observation rooms. The kind that hid cameras, the kind that watched without being seen. Her stomach tightened. The entire house was an extension of Nova Labs, she realized. Every hallway, every screen, every soundproof panel built not for luxury but for control. Behind her, the butler's voice broke the stillness. "Ms. James, you have duties." "Yes, sir," she said, rising slowly. He studied the boy for a moment, his expression polite but cold. "He doesn't need coddling. He needs management." "Children aren't accounts," Nora said quietly. He didn't respond. The click of his shoes faded into the distance, leaving only the soft slide of toy cars against marble. Leo lifted one of the cars, stared at it, and whispered, almost inaudible, "Red." Nora froze. "Leo, you said red." He blinked, startled as if the sound had escaped without permission. Then, quickly, he pressed his palms over his ears. "It's all right," she said, crouching again. "You can speak if you want." He shook his head violently. "They'll come." Her pulse stumbled. Who? He didn't answer. He set the car down, aligning it perfectly with the others. Every toy faced the same direction, toward the corridor that led to the west wing, where no staff were allowed to enter. Nora looked toward that hallway at the double doors sealed with a biometric lock. Behind them, faint mechanical hums pulsed like a heartbeat under the floor. She'd asked once what was inside. The butler had said, "Storage." But the light beneath the doors never went out. Later, when the boy was taken for his daily checkup, Nora found herself drawn to that same hallway. She walked past the portraits, scientists, benefactors, men in white coats, and stopped at the end of the corridor. The hum was louder here, deeper, almost rhythmic. She pressed her ear to the cold metal door. A faint clicking came from within, like insects crawling across glass. Then, something else. A sound too low to be mechanical. Breathing. Nora stepped back, her throat dry. The badge scanner blinked red, waiting for authorization. Above it, a camera adjusted its lens and focused on her face. She turned away, forcing her feet to move. In the dining hall, Dr. Vale sat alone at the table, reading a medical brief. He didn't look up as she entered. "How is my son?" he asked, voice casual, detached. "He's improving," she said. He spoke again. That made him glance up. "Spoke?" "One word," she said. "Red." Adrian set the file down slowly. "You're certain?" "Yes, sir." He leaned back, eyes narrowing in thought. "I see." Nora waited for emotion, pride, joy, relief, but saw none. Only calculation. "Does he remember what happened?" "I don't know," she said carefully. He nodded once. "Good. Don't encourage conversation. Let Nova handle it." "Nova?" she repeated. "They specialize in corrections." She opened her mouth to ask what that meant, but he had already returned to his documents. When she left the room, her hands shook. She didn't know what they were correcting, his hearing or his humanity. That night, she stood by her small window, watching the lights in the west wing flicker behind the trees. Somewhere inside that sealed corridor, the truth was moving. And it was still alive. Rain began before dawn, whispering across the glass roof like a warning. Nora woke to it and knew the day would be wrong. The air in the servants' quarters was heavy, metallic. Somewhere above, the generators hummed in perfect rhythm, too perfect, as though even the weather was being timed. When she entered the corridor, she saw 2 guards posted by the elevator leading to the west wing. That had never happened before. Each man wore an earpiece and the same polished indifference. They nodded as she passed, but their eyes tracked her until she disappeared into the laundry hall. On the counter lay Leo's shirt from yesterday, a small smear of dark residue near the collar. She touched it with a cloth, sticky, faintly warm. It wasn't blood. It shimmered like oil under the light. She wrapped the cloth quickly and hid it in her pocket. At breakfast, the staff avoided her. They'd all heard what happened. Some looked frightened for her, others resentful. In a house like this, silence was the only currency that kept you fed. By mid-morning, Nora was sent to clean the study. Dr. Vale wasn't there. His desk gleamed under the skylight, papers perfectly aligned, coffee still steaming. She should have turned around. Instead, she looked closer. A folder sat half open marked Nova Internal, Audit 7B. She recognized the logo from the hospital reports. Her pulse quickened. Inside were photos, scans of a child's skull, annotations, and something worse, signatures. Her gaze caught on a familiar name, Leo Vale. Age 3, procedure, cochlear inhibition test. Status, indefinite observation. She stared until the letters blurred. The date was 7 years ago. He had been part of their research long before his father called it a condition. The door clicked. She spun around, nearly knocking the chair over. Dr. Vale stood in the doorway, an umbrella dripping rainwater onto the marble. His eyes flicked to the open file, then to her hands. "You're out of place," he said. "I was just cleaning." He stepped forward, voice low. "You're lying." Her throat tightened. "You lied first." The words escaped before she could stop them. His gaze hardened, a quiet fury under control. "You don't understand what that research means." "I understand what it did," she said. "He's terrified of hospitals. He remembers something." "What did you do to him?" Vale's jaw tensed. "Enough." He reached for the file, but she stepped back, clutching it. For a heartbeat, their reflections merged in the glass behind him. Master and servant, both prisoners of their own silence. "You think money buys everything?" she said. "Even guilt." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Money buys survival." The sentence hung between them like smoke. From the hall came a sudden thud, small, quick footsteps, a child's breathless cry. Leo burst into the room, eyes wide, hands pressed to his ear. "Hurts!" he gasped. The single word cracked open the air. Nora ran to him. "Let me see." He shook his head, trembling. "Inside," he whispered again. "It's still there." Dr. Vale crouched down, his face pale. "He's been examined." There's nothing left, but Nora saw it. The faint tremor beneath the skin, a tiny ripple near the ear canal. Something moving where nothing should move. "We have to call someone," she said. "We will," Vale replied. But not Nova. His voice was steady, yet fear shadowed his eyes. Leo flinched suddenly, a sharp cry escaping him. Then he went still. A thin line of black fluid traced down his neck, glistening under the light. Nora caught him before he fell. "Leo!" The room filled with the mechanical buzz of hidden cameras adjusting. Somewhere behind the walls, the system was watching, recording, measuring. Vale pressed a button on his desk. Alarms muted, doors sealed with a hiss. "No one comes in or out until I say so." Nora stared at him. "You knew this would happen." He didn't answer. Leo's breathing steadied, faint but present. The black line had stopped, drying into a strange, crystalline sheen. "What is it?" she asked. Vale looked at the boy's ear, then at her. "Something we buried," he said quietly. "And something that never died." Nora shivered. Outside, the rain grew heavier, smearing the world into gray. He rose slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm already here," she said. "And I'm not leaving him." For the first time, he didn't argue. He only looked at the window, where lightning flashed across his reflection. "You think this house is about silence?" he said. "It's not. It's about what silence hides." Thunder rolled through the valley, shaking the glass. Somewhere inside the walls, a low hum began again. Steady, deliberate, mechanical. It sounded like breathing. The storm outside had swallowed the world in gray. Inside, the mansion glowed like a machine pretending to be a home. The lights along the corridor dimmed and pulsed, following some unseen rhythm. Nora carried Leo to his room, her arms shaking, the boy's small body limp against her chest. Dr. Vale followed, silent, hands locked behind his back. When they reached the door, he said, "Lay him down, carefully." Nora obeyed, brushing damp hair from Leo's forehead. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow. The black residue near his ear glimmered faintly, catching the light like oil on water. Vale drew the curtains, shutting out the storm. "You said it moved." "It did," she whispered. "I felt it." He turned toward her. "What exactly did you do the night he spoke?" She hesitated. "I saw something inside his ear. I thought it was dirt. When I touched it with the pin, it moved," she nodded. "Like it was alive." Vale's expression didn't change, but something cold slid through his eyes. "Describe it." "Black, smooth. It shimmered under the light. And when I pulled it out, he spoke." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you kept it?" "They took it," she said. "Your men," he exhaled slowly. "Then it's still here." Nora stared at him. "What was it?" Instead of answering, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thin metal case. Inside lay a set of tools, delicate, precise, surgical. "You can't mean I need to see what's left," he said. "Hold him still." Her breath caught. "No, he's a child." Vale met her eyes. "He's my child." Lightning flashed, throwing their shadows against the walls. For a moment, Nora saw herself pinned there beside him, Servant and master united by the same fear. "Trust me," he said softly. "If it's what I think, we don't have much time." Leo stirred, murmuring something unintelligible. His eyelids fluttered. The faint hum in the walls grew louder, synchronized with the pulse at his neck. Vale bent over him, tools gleaming. "Light," he said. Nora switched on the lamp. Its reflection burned across the silver instruments. "Just a surface look," he murmured. Nothing invasive, but as the light touched Leo's ear, Nora gasped. The skin there rippled slightly, as if something underneath was breathing. Vale's face went white. "Dear God, what is it?" He didn't answer. He reached out with a sterile swab, pressing gently. A thin stream of black liquid oozed out, coating the cotton. He held it up to the light. Inside, microscopic filaments twitched, like threads searching for warmth. "That's impossible," he whispered. "They said the prototypes were destroyed." "Prototypes?" Vale set the swab down carefully. "It's synthetic tissue, bioreactive. It adapts to neural patterns. We used it years ago to test auditory nerve regeneration." "And you put it in your own son?" "No," he said quickly. "Not me, Nova." Nora stepped back, her stomach turning. "They experimented on him." Vale's voice cracked. "I didn't know," the boy groaned, rolling his head. The black sheen along his ear deepened. "Help me," Nora said, gripping his arm. "Do something." He looked at her helplessly. "There's nothing in the protocols for this." "Then forget your protocols." She grabbed the small silver pin from her pocket, the same one she'd used before. "He trusted me once. He'll trust me again." "Nora, don't—" But she was already kneeling beside Leo. "Hold the light steady." Vale hesitated, then obeyed. Her hands trembled. She took a breath. "It's okay, Leo," she whispered. "You'll be all right." The tip of the pin touched the edge of the black residue. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the skin convulsed. The black film peeled back, curling like burnt paper. Leo gasped. His eyes shot open, pupils wide, lips trembling. A sound tore from his throat, raw, electric, filled with terror. Nora almost dropped the pin. "It's all right, baby. You're safe." Vale's voice shook. "Keep going." "It's detaching." The black layer lifted in a thin strand, stretching, alive, until it snapped free and landed in her palm. It twitched once, then went still. Silence followed, heavy and waiting. Leo blinked rapidly. His breathing slowed. Then he whispered, "I can hear." Nora froze. The words were clear this time, unbroken. Dr. Vale sank into a chair, staring at nothing. It worked. Nora looked down at the thing in her hand, small, wet, shining like glass. "It was never meant to stay inside him, was it?" Vale swallowed hard. "No, it was meant to measure sound. To own it!" Before she could speak, alarms began to blare through the mansion. Doors locked automatically. Lights flashed crimson. Vale jumped to his feet. "They know." "Who?" "Nova," the intercom crackled, a voice sliding through the static. "Dr. Vale, step away from the subject." Nora held Leo close, her heart racing. "Subject?" she whispered. The voice came again, colder now. "Terminate unauthorized personnel. Secure the prototype." The window shattered before they could move. Figures in black poured through the rain. The storm had finally come inside. When Nora opened her eyes, the ceiling above her was white and humming. The light stung. The air smelled like metal and disinfectant. For a moment, she thought she was dead. Then the pain in her wrists told her otherwise. Metal cuffs. A chair bolted to the floor. Across the room, behind glass, figures moved in silence. Doctors, guards, machines. And behind them, Dr. Adrian Vale stood watching. His suit was gone. He wore a hospital coat now, his face pale and sleepless. "Where's Leo?" she whispered. Her throat was dry. Vale pressed a button on the wall. The speaker crackled. "He's safe. For now." "For now," she said. "What did they do to him?" He didn't answer. The intercom clicked off. A woman in a gray uniform entered instead, carrying a clipboard and a tablet. Her ID tag read Nova Medical Systems. "Ms. James," she said with a practiced smile, "you've been through quite an ordeal. We just need to confirm your statement." I already gave one, not to us. The woman sat across from her. You interfered with a proprietary experiment. You extracted biological material belonging to Nova. We need to know how. Belonging? Nora repeated. That thing was inside a child. The woman's eyes were flat. A child who is part of our auditory development study. You mean your lab rat? The smile didn't change. You're angry, understandable, but our work helps thousands of children. Nora leaned forward, the cuffs clinking. You don't help them. You own them. The woman stood. We'll resume later. She turned toward the glass. She's unstable. 2 guards entered, pulling Nora to her feet. One of them whispered almost kindly, Don't fight. It's worse when you fight. As they dragged her out, she glimpsed another corridor through the glass. Rows of rooms, each identical, each containing a bed, a monitor, and a small figure lying still. Children. She fought harder. What are you doing to them? No one answered. They shoved her into another room. This one darker, colder. On the wall, monitors showed streams of data, graphs, brainwaves. In the center, behind reinforced glass, Leo sat on a metal chair, wires attached to his temples. His eyes were open, unfocused. Nora's breath hitched. Leo! He didn't move. Vale appeared beside her outside the glass. He's under observation. They're testing neural response. You said he was safe. He is, for now. His voice was distant, hollow. They won't hurt him. They just need to understand how the tissue integrated. You knew, she said. You knew they used him. He flinched. I didn't know it was him. They told me the trials were suspended. They said no subjects survived. Subjects, she repeated. Not children, subjects. The intercom above them crackled again. Dr. Vale, a male voice said. Step into observation 2. The board is waiting. He hesitated. Then to Nora. I'll fix this. Fix it? She spat. You can't fix what you built. He left. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. Inside the glass chamber, Leo blinked. His lips moved. For a second, she thought he was mouthing her name. Then the monitor beside him spiked. The black residue on his ear began to glow faintly blue. Stop! Nora shouted. He's in pain! Technicians ignored her. The machines whined higher, screens flooding with color. The door burst open again. Vale stormed in, tearing off his ID badge. Shut it down! One of the technicians turned, startled. Sir, the board authorized. I am the board, he roared. Turn it off! The machines went silent. The glow faded. Leo slumped forward, breathing raggedly. Nora pounded on the glass. Let me in! Vale keyed the lock. The door opened, alarms wailing in protest. She ran to the boy, tearing the sensors from his skin. You're okay. I've got you. Vale stood behind her, trembling. They'll kill me for this. Then make it worth dying for, she said. He stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. You were right, he whispered. It wasn't medicine. It was marketing. From the hallway came the sound of boots and shouted orders. Guards! Nora looked around, desperate. Where can we go? Vale crossed to the control panel, typing commands with shaking hands. There's an emergency exit in the service tunnel. It leads to the parking level. They'll see us. Not if I erase the cameras. He paused, then handed her a small flash drive. Take this. It's everything, the reports, the funding trails, the patents. Proof that Nova's been keeping children sick for money. Nora took it, her hands trembling. What about you? I'll stall them, she shook her head. They'll kill you, he gave a small, tired smile. Maybe that's justice, alarms blared louder. The lights turned red. He opened the service door and pushed her toward it. Go, get him out. Tell the world what we did. Nora looked back once. Vale was already surrounded by guards, hands raised, shouting something she couldn't hear. Then the door slammed shut between them. She ran through the tunnel, Leo in her arms, the flash drive pressed against her heart. Behind her, the sirens grew distant, then faded entirely. When she reached the exit, the rain had stopped. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of dawn. Leo stirred weakly. Where's home? She looked down at him. We'll find one. He closed his eyes. I can still hear it, he murmured. The sound inside. What sound? He opened his eyes again, and for the first time she saw fear older than any child should carry. "Them," he whispered. "They're still listening." The news broke at dawn. Screens across the city flashed the same headline: Dr. Adrian Vale arrested amid bioethics scandal. A photograph accompanied it, Vale in handcuffs. Head lowered, flashes of cameras slicing through the rain like lightning. By noon, the world had turned his name into a curse. The media called him the Doctor of Silence. Nova called him a rogue scientist. And somewhere between those lies, Nora James waited in a motel room with a boy who hadn't stopped trembling since they escaped. The television murmured in the corner. A panel of reporters debated motives, funding, betrayal. No one mentioned the children in those rooms. No one mentioned what the implants had done to them. Nora sat by the window, watching the street below. Trucks came and went, carrying boxes marked Nova Medical Supplies. She had the flash drive Vale gave her. Proof, he'd said. Proof of everything. But proof only mattered if someone was willing to listen. Leo stirred on the bed. "They're angry," he said softly. "Who?" "The men on the screens." She smiled weakly. "They're afraid, not angry." He turned his head. "Afraid of what?" "Of people who finally know the truth." A knock came at the door. 2 soft taps, then 1 long. The pattern Vale had taught her before they fled. Nora froze. She opened the door a crack. A man in a gray coat stood there, one of Vale's attorneys, face drawn, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "He sent me," the man said. "He's out on bail, but only for a few hours." "Where is he?" "He's calling a press conference." He said to bring the boy. "And the drive?" Nora hesitated, then nodded. She gathered the small bag, helped Leo into his jacket, and followed the man out into the gray morning. The hospital's conference hall was already full when they arrived. Reporters, cameras, security. The air hummed with accusation. On the stage, Dr. Adrian Vale stood behind a podium, thinner, older, but calm. The room quieted as he began to speak. "For years," he said, "I built a dream of restoring hearing to those born without it. But that dream was corrupted by greed, by the illusion that profit could replace compassion." His voice carried through the hall, firm but trembling at the edges. What began as science became silence, a silence that trapped innocent children in pain. He paused, glancing toward the back of the room where Nora stood holding Leo's hand. For a second, his expression softened. "One of those children is here," he continued. "My son. And the woman who saved him is the reason you're hearing the truth today." Cameras swung toward Nora. She stiffened, pulling Leo closer. "She risked her life to uncover what I refused to see," Vale said, "because she understood something that our entire industry forgot. Hearing is not a luxury. It is a right." The room buzzed with whispers, the rhythm of 1,000 keys clicking notes of disbelief. He reached into his pocket and held up a small object sealed in a clear capsule. Inside, the black tissue shimmered faintly, alive under the lights. "This," he said, "was implanted into children as part of Nova's neural stimulation trials. It was never meant to heal them. It was designed to control them, to create dependency so the funding never stopped." A gasp rippled through the hall. He placed the capsule on the podium. "I signed those authorizations. I believed the lies, but ignorance is not innocence. I will not ask for forgiveness. Only for justice." Reporters shouted questions, flashes erupted, security murmured into radios. Vale raised a hand. "Nova's executives will deny everything. They will call this an isolated failure. But I have documents, proof that the corruption runs to the top. Those files are no longer in my possession. They are with someone who will not be silenced." Every camera turned toward Nora again. The attorney whispered, "Now." She stepped forward slowly. The crowd parted. Her hands shook as she placed the flash drive on the table before the reporters. "These are the names," she said quietly. "The children, the trials, the money." Her voice grew stronger. "Listen to them. Don't let them disappear again." Reporters surged forward, microphones outstretched. "Who are you?" Someone shouted. She hesitated, then answered, "No one important. Just someone who finally heard." The room fell still. Vale's eyes met hers across the distance. For a moment, the noise of the world seemed to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of something new. Hope. Then the doors burst open. Nova's legal team swept in, shouting injunctions, waving papers. But it was too late. The data was already uploading, the screens behind the podium filling with documents, signatures, medical codes. The truth was alive and multiplying. Outside, on the hospital steps, cameras flashed like lightning as reporters spilled into the rain, shouting headlines into microphones. The story was already spreading. Inside, Vale stepped down from the podium. He reached Nora and placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You did what I couldn't," he said. She looked up at him. "You started it." "I just finished the sentence." He smiled faintly, a tired man finding peace. "Then maybe now we can listen." Outside, the rain eased, tapping softly against the glass like applause. Night fell softly over the city, draping the hospital in a calm it had never known. For the first time in years, there were no reporters outside, no guards pacing the corridors. Only the slow rhythm of rainfall against the windows and the faint hum of machines keeping watch. In room 417, Leo Vale slept with his head resting against Nora's arm. The steady rise and fall of his chest was the only sound she needed. He had spoken again that afternoon, his voice still shaky but stronger. Every word felt like a sunrise. Dr. Adrian Vale sat by the window, staring out at the courtyard where the hospital's fountain glimmered under the lamps. The same fountain that had once been silent. Tonight it was alive with water, steady and bright, spilling over the marble rim like laughter that had finally found its way out. Nora looked up from the boy. "You should rest," he shook his head. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I hear them." "The board?" "The children," he said quietly. "All the ones I didn't save." She said nothing. The silence between them wasn't heavy now. It was honest. Vale stood, walking closer to the bed. "He reminds me that miracles don't belong to men like me. We only name them after they happen." "You changed," she said. He smiled faintly. "No, you changed me." Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant and low. "What happens now?" she asked. He exhaled, looking at his hands. "The government will dismantle Nova, the investors will run. And the world will forget, like it always does. But maybe this time they'll remember his face long enough to think before building the next empire." Nora traced her fingers over Leo's hair. "And you?" "I'll testify. I'll face the board, the courts, whatever comes. You could disappear," she said. "Start again somewhere quiet." He shook his head. "I've spent my whole life hiding behind quiet. It's time to live in the noise." They both turned as Leo stirred. His eyelids fluttered open. "Dad?" he murmured. Vale bent down, startled by the word. "Yes, son. I heard the rain," Leo said. "It sounds—" "Happy." Tears filled the man's eyes. "It is." Leo smiled, small and tired, then drifted back into sleep. Nora stood and walked toward the window. The courtyard lights shimmered through the glass, painting their reflections over the water. "When I was little," she said, "we lived near a broken fountain. It never worked. My mother said it was waiting for someone to listen to it again." Vale's voice softened. "Maybe that's what this is. A broken fountain, finally speaking. They watch the ripples spreading outward, small, endless, unafraid. In the morning, the world would change again. News anchors would replay the footage. Protests would rise outside Nova's headquarters. Parents would demand answers. Lawyers would descend. The system would defend itself. But for tonight, there was only the rain, the boy's steady breathing, and two people who no longer believed that silence meant peace." Vale turned to her. "You could have left me there." "Why didn't you?" "Because he needed you," she said simply. "And maybe the world needed to see you fall and stand again." He nodded. "Redemption," he whispered, tasting the word like it was new. "No," she said. "Responsibility." A faint smile crossed his face. "You're better with words than I am." "Only because I spent my life being told not to use them." They shared a quiet laugh. It was fragile but real. Outside, dawn began to bloom, soft gold spilling over the skyline. The fountain sparkled in its light. Vale watched it for a long time, then spoke almost to himself. For years, I thought hearing was just a sense, he said. Now I know it's a choice. Nora turned from the window. And silence. He met her eyes. Sometimes silence is just fear with good manners, she smiled. Then I guess it's time to be loud. He looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully. Let him be the voice we never had. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence was kind. It breathed. It healed. Outside, the fountain's water caught the first light of the new day. It shimmered, like liquid gold, whispering a single truth through the morning air, that even after years of silence, the world still knows how to listen. The sun rose over the city like a quiet confession, painting the rooftops in soft amber. Reporters had already gathered at the gates of the Vale estate, their voices cutting through the morning air, demanding answers, reactions, statements. None came. The mansion's doors stayed closed, its windows reflecting only the light. Inside, Nora walked slowly through the halls she had once cleaned in silence. Dust covered the marble floors. The portraits, once polished daily, now hung in dull frames. The empire of order had collapsed, leaving something simpler behind. Truth. She found Adrian Vale in his study, packing a small suitcase. He looked thinner, older, but there was peace in his movements, the calm of a man who had stopped running from himself. "You're leaving?" she asked. He nodded. "Court hearings begin next week. After that, I'll disappear somewhere the noise can't find me." "You could stay. Start again here, differently." He smiled faintly. "This place was built on silence. It will take generations to unlearn it." Nora looked around the room. The air smelled of dust and rain. "It's strange," she said. "For years this house felt alive, but now that it's quiet, it finally feels honest." "Silence can tell the truth, too," he said. "We just have to learn how to listen." From the doorway came a small sound, a laugh, soft and certain. Leo stood there, barefoot, holding a small notebook in one hand. His voice still carried the slight tremor of someone rediscovering language, but every word was clear. "I wrote something," he said shyly. "A story." Nora knelt to his level. "Can I hear it?" He nodded and read. "Once, there was a big house that hated noise, but one day the house heard a boy laugh and it realized that silence wasn't peace, it was loneliness." She smiled through the ache in her throat. "That's beautiful." He grinned. "It's true." Adrian bent down beside them, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. "He's been writing every morning," he said softly. "He wants to start a foundation for kids like him." Nora's eyes widened. "A foundation?" Leo nodded. "Not for rich kids, for everyone." Adrian looked at her. "It's the only way to make the noise matter." They stepped outside together. The air was crisp, filled with the smell of wet grass and the faint hum of city traffic below the hill. The fountain at the center of the courtyard sparkled under the sunlight, its water arching high, alive again. Nora stood beside it, watching the ripples spread outward. "It's strange," she murmured. "After everything, I still hear it." "Hear what?" Adrian asked. "The sound that started it all. The sound beneath silence." He followed her gaze. The water caught the light like glass breaking, scattering reflections across their faces. Leo tilted his head. "That sound," he said quietly. "It's not the fountain. It's inside it. It's singing." For a moment, they all listened. The world seemed to hold its breath. Beneath the rush of water was something faint, a resonance, soft and human, like hundreds of whispers overlapping. Adrian closed his eyes. "Do you hear them?" "Yes," Nora said. "The children." The sound swelled gently, not frightening but warm, like a memory returning home. It carried words unspoken, the voices of those who had been silenced, finally finding air. Adrian knelt beside his son. "Every sound you hear now, every laugh, every storm, every drop of rain, it belongs to them too. Don't ever forget that." "I won't," Leo said. They stood there until the light shifted, until the whispers faded back into the rhythm of the fountain. When they went inside, Nora paused at the threshold, looking back once more. The mansion, once a monument to pride, now looked human, worn, imperfect, alive. Later that evening, she would leave for the city, carrying with her the files, the stories, and the weight of what they'd uncovered. She would help build the foundation Leo dreamed of. She would tell their story, not as tragedy, but as proof that listening can change the world. As she closed the door behind her, the wind passed through the courtyard, carrying the faintest echo of a boy's voice. "Thank you," it said. The fountain answered with a single splash, then fell quiet again. Not the cold silence of fear, but the gentle kind that follows truth. Because in the end, silence was never empty. It was waiting for someone to listen. Years later, the mansion no longer stood. Where its marble halls once rose above the city, there was now a garden, a public space filled with trees and small bronze plaques engraved with names. The fountain still remained, restored and open to everyone. Children played around it, their laughter echoing through the air like bells that refused to stop ringing. A small sign near the entrance read, "The Vale Foundation for Hearing and Human Dignity," founded in memory of those who were silenced. Every spring, people gathered here, doctors, teachers, parents, the children who once couldn't hear. They called it the Day of Sound. No speeches, no ceremonies, just noise, beautiful and unfiltered. Nora James sat on a bench near the fountain, her hair streaked with gray, a book open in her lap. She didn't read. She just listened. To the rush of water, to the conversations, to the heartbeat of life that had returned. Leo Vale stood a few yards away, now in his 20s, addressing a group of students. His voice was confident, calm. "You don't need to be born powerful to make change," he said. "You just need to care enough to hear what others ignore." Nora smiled faintly. His tone carried his father's strength, but not his arrogance. A woman approached her, a journalist. "Ms. James, they're asking for you to say something." "I've said enough in my life," she replied with a small laugh. "Let them speak now." But the crowd had noticed her. Someone began to clap. Then another. Within moments, the applause spread like wildfire. Nora rose slowly, feeling the years settle across her shoulders. She walked to the fountain's edge, where Leo waited with a microphone. "You should be the one speaking," she whispered. He shook his head. "We speak together." The noise died down. Nora looked over the crowd. Faces of all colors, all ages. Some with hearing aids, some signing silently, others just listening. "When I first came to this house," she began, "it was a place built to keep sound out. People thought silence meant safety. But silence can be a cage. It can hide cruelty behind politeness, greed behind order. What broke that silence wasn't money or science. It was care." Her voice steadied. "I was just a maid. He was just a boy. But together we proved that no one is truly voiceless if someone chooses to hear them." Applause rose again, not thunderous but warm like rain. Leo stepped beside her. "We built this garden so that no one forgets what happens when the world stops listening," he said. "Every child here matters. Every sound counts." The crowd cheered. Somewhere, a little girl with a hearing device laughed aloud for the first time, and everyone turned toward the sound. The laughter spread, catching on the wind, rippling through the space like a song only hearts could recognize. Nora closed her eyes. For a moment, she felt the presence of those who weren't there. Grace, Daniel, all the children who never got to grow up, all the voices once buried in sterile rooms. she whispered to herself. You're heard now, as... The day waned. Leo approached her again, holding out a small notebook, the same one he'd written in as a child. Its cover was worn, pages yellowed with time. It's finished, he said. What is it? A book, he smiled. I called it The Sound Beneath Silence. Nora ran her fingers across the title. You kept writing. I had to, he said. It's how I remember. They stood together as the sun dipped low, the fountain's spray catching the last light. Do you think they forgive us? He asked quietly. Nora looked at the horizon. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, she said. It's something you keep giving, one life at a time. A gust of wind carried the scent of water and blossoms. The sound of children's laughter mixed with the murmur of the city below. For the first time, there was no fear in the noise, only music. As they turned to leave, Nora glanced back at the fountain one last time. Its water shimmered under the fading light, whispering a sound she'd never forget. A promise, eternal and clear, that even in a world that tries to stay quiet, someone, somewhere, will always listen.